A powerful Mexican drug cartel has allegedly taken responsibility for the kidnapping of 4 U.S. citizens and killing 2 of them. Now they
There are countless stories about the most ruthless men that have ever lived, and most prison break movies are focused on men. But what if I told you that there are just as many female crime bosses as the males? Women who, despite being in prison, cause inmates and guards to shiver. These women call the shots and are ruthless while at it. As they say, what a man can do. Here are the stories of 3 women who have been considered the most feared in prison. Maria Chatelain. Born in 1964 in Guerrero, Mexico, Maria is known as an infamous drug queenpin who ran a cartel that spread rapidly from northeast Los Angeles to beyond the borders of her community. She was born in a dysfunctional and poor family and had to learn to take care of herself. This often comes with picking habits from the street, both good and bad. Growing up, she would sell ice cream and popsicles to kids then. She gradually moved from that to honing her skills while she set out to carve a niche for herself in the crime world. With 13 children to look after, Maria chose her path. She built an organization of loyal followers, known as the Avenues. Originally, they protected each other from unfair treatment and would come together to watch a Latino game, but Maria changed that. She introduced drugs to the organization and was known in no long time as the queen pig of the drug trade in her neighborhood. She expanded and got involved with human trafficking and smuggling. This brought her more influence and, of course, wealth. Her organization grew, and the streets were practically unsafe with a lot going on. A cherry on the top of the cake for Maria would have been her joining the Mexican mafia, but her gender stopped that from happening, although she had their support and protection. In addition to her involvement with the mafia-related crimes, Maria was also an illegal immigrant, and each time the court got a hold of her, her excuse revolved around her children, and somehow like dust, she faded from the claws of the law. Certainly, law enforcement was not blind to activities from Drew Street, they just needed enough evidence to make Maria answer for her crimes. While law enforcement was trying to find ways to get her arrested and her organization, the Avenues, dismantled, Maria became more ruthless and powerful. But when the police were closing in on her, she left Los Angeles and moved to Mexicali, where she hoped to continue building her empire. Meanwhile, her son Francisco took charge of the business in Los Angeles. But unfortunately, in one of their encounters with the police, Daniel, Maria's son, was killed, and so Maria had to get herself back to Los Angeles to bury her son. This wasn't going to be easy, and even after reaching out to her contacts, she was still stuck until Francisco got a friend to try and smuggle his mother into Los Angeles. All this while the police were keeping an intense tab on the Avenue organization, tapping phones when necessary, and when they got info about Maria's plan to illegally get into Los Angeles, it was their chance. And they took it. On October 31st, 2022, Maria's satellite house, which is the den for the Avenue's gang activities, was unexpectedly raided by the police. This must have been so shocking to Maria and the rest of the gang because the house also served as a hideout for members who were on the police search list. A warranted search was conducted and the police found drugs, guns, and even explosives on the property. Sadly, kids who were saddled with the responsibility of selling drugs were also found on the premises. Maria was arrested while she was paying her last respects to her son, Daniel, and charged with narcotics trafficking, child endangerment. She was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Her son, Francisco, testified against her, and the other members of the gang arrested and cooperated with the police, all for a lighter sentence. At last, the members of the Drew Streets community were free from the ruthless presence of Maria Leon and her gangsters. If you think that this Maria is ruthless, then wait until you meet Maria Licciardi. Ruthless doesn't fully describe this woman and all she represented. Maria Licciardi. Born in March of 1951, Maria Licciardi was raised on the suburbs of Secondigliano, and the entire family belonged to the Camorra. She got married to Antonio, who was also in the Camorra, and her role as married to a member of the mafia community is to be tight-lipped, cook, clean, and raise the kids. All these she did very well. Something else she did very well was learn how to run an organization. After the demise of her father and the incarceration of her husband and brothers, she stepped in and took over the reign of affairs. To prove her capacity as a leader, she brought in the various Camorra clan leaders together and got them to stop fighting over territories and come together to collectively oversee the drug trade and cigarette business, and also expanded it. With Maria Licciardi in charge, the Camorra business became more secretive and organized. She was cold to offenders and would make the same ruthless decision her male counterparts would take. The beginning of the end started when she decided to alter the rules of the organization and introduce prostitution into it. She convinced the clan leaders and began running a brothel. The women were lured with job prospects, but on arrival, they were given drugs to stop them from running away. The first problem came when a member of the organization was arrested and agreed to testify against Maria. She got out of this situation and was still trying to keep the Camorra business away from the police, when she had a fallout with some clan members of the Camorra. A pure sample of heroin was brought in, and Maria was asked to sell. Realizing what damage it could bring on the members of the community, she refused. Some clan leaders already had a problem with Maria as their leader decided to go against her orders and sell. The aftermath was addicts drying up and dying on the streets. This attracted law enforcement, and a crackdown on the Camorra organization was conducted. Maria Licciardi went into hiding, but in 2001, after what seemed like an eternity, she was arrested and released in 2009. In 2021, she was arrested again on the charges of running an extortion racket as the head of the Licciardi Camorra clan. This was the end of her reign as the leader of the Camorra organization, and it says a lot about the power women possess when they set their heart to it. It's interesting to note that the organization crumbled with Maria Licciardi out of the picture. Another interesting fact to note is among the names that she was called, Capo di Capi stands out. It means boss of bosses. Moshinar Chowdhury. Chowdhury, unlike other women, didn't have a difficult childhood or one with criminal orientation. Hers is a case of exposure to the wrong things will over time have their desired effect on a person. Chowdhury had a decent childhood in Newham, East London, and you can easily assume that a person like this is incapable of having darkness inside of them. She attended Plachette School and went on to pursue her A-levels at Newham Sixth Form College. She was described as a smart, dedicated child, but her life took a surprising turn when she went to King's College, London, to pursue a degree in English. She dropped out after a while because she considered the school to be anti-Islamic, and she led a series of what could easily be called a revolutionary gathering. For someone who was out of school, she sure needed to fill her mind, and this is what she did. Chowdhury became obsessed with Anwar al-Awlaqi's teachings on the internet, and gradually became an Islamic extremist. Al-Awlaqi's teachings were the much-needed fuel for the explosion set to happen inside Chowdhury. On May 14, 2010, Chowdhury's path crossed with Stephen Timms, the Labour MP for East Ham. She approached Timms for what looked like a handshake, and what followed was her pulling out a knife that was used to stab him. The incident happened at Beckton Globe Library. Tim's support for the Iraq War was all Chowdhury needed as an excuse. She didn't think he was worth living for supporting the war against Iraq. This is what happens when the internet is filled with materials that could change a person. The result of this incident was lacerations to the left lobe of his liver and perforations to his stomach. Timms had to fight for his life and underwent surgery, while Chowdhury admitted to committing the crime and stated that she acted under the influence of al-Awlaqi's teachings. On November 2, 2010, Chowdhury was sentenced to life imprisonment for attempted murder with a minimal jail term of 15 years. If you like true crime videos like this, hit the subscribe icon and don't forget to like and leave a comment.